Hi, I'm Michael Peck and welcome to this week's LCI webinar. Today we're going to meet with John Chu, Executive Creative Director for Pray Tell Agency out of the United States. We're going to learn all about how he's turned a life of travel, design exploration, experimentation and just making interesting things into a really exciting career. Let's meet John. Hi John, how are you going?
Hi, good Mike. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's a very sunny day in Melbourne today, and I know that you're originally from Melbourne, but you live in Venice in LA now. How's the weather over there at the moment?
It's good. Considering it's winter here, it's pretty good. Most of the time, I know you probably hear California is sunny California, and it's pretty true. And I love it. It's a nice 20-something degrees now, and nice blue skies, as per usual, really.
Beautiful. Do you miss the extremes of the Melbourne Four Seasons?
I do not miss the extremes. Can't say I do.
I guess you've got the beach, like 100 meters from your house?
Yeah. So I've been here for 2 years now, in LA specifically, or Venice. And I wanted to try out the beach. And it happened, fortunately just right before COVID. And then COVID hit, but I was already based here, and it's been a blessing because, the beach is a few steps away, and it's been nice just to have that be our outdoors. Backyard, pretty much. I call it my backyard, which is nice to have.
Yeah, you're really lucky. So maybe going back to actually who you are. Who are you, John?
So my name's John. I'm an executive creative director and head of design for an agency, a creative communications agency called Pray Tell. We're pretty much a global agency now. It started off in Brooklyn 9 years ago, and has grown from a very small startup to now being all across the US and London and Australia.
Wow! And you were one of the first 5 or 6 employees at Pray Tell?
Yeah. So. I was basically, I've been traveling living in different cities and different countries for over a decade now. And part of that stint was, deciding to go try out America, try out the US, and landed in New York. And you do your thing, you're trying to hand out your portfolio and all that kind of stuff. So I was just fortunate, the right timing to apply for a job and as a designer at the time, and from there I was I had 2 opportunities to work for a company that was very well established, and Pray Tell, which was a startup that I had no clue what they were doing. I just knew they needed a designer, and I chose that because I really wanted to be a part of something that I can help build. So I was very lucky, and then started with them, and it's 9 years later, and still part of that part of the agency, part of the whole journey.
That's amazing. So let's stick with that for a second. So I know for a lot of young designers, and especially our students at LCI, they're all kind of wondering, how do I go about getting the job, the great job? And I know that you've told me that when you went for that interview that, you had a portfolio which was just packed full of stuff. How did that kind of play out?
Yeah, so I did, when I landed, I tried to connect with Australian, other Australian expats that were in the creative field, and I kind of reached out to a few connections back in Melbourne, and they put me in touch with people that were in New York and working within agencies or creative on the creative side. So I connected with a couple actually, and it was funny. Their advice was, Australia is very different to US in terms of you really how you feel about selling yourself and selling your portfolio or showing what you can do. We tend to not play it down, but be very modest with our capabilities and this is my portfolio, and you do sell yourself, but not to the extent that I feel like I was told Americans do. And a guy that I chatted with, he was like, look, just when you feel like you're pushing so much and selling yourself, just add another like 50% onto that, because that's the level that is at here. And also, fast forward all these years and I'm interviewing other designers for roles within my agency. It has that, but it also, I've changed the way I've sort of seeked out or asked questions, or I'm trying to find out about what their capabilities are in interviews. But yeah, that process. Sorry, say what was the last part of your question again, Mike?
I think the question was, how did that play out? So you went into this interview and you had a folio full of stuff, and I'm going to ask you some questions about how you actually built that folio. But I'm trying to start at the end here to kind of say, hey, look, this is where you are and where you've come to in your career just at Praytell. Before that, it's a whole other story, I know. How did that play out when they actually found out that you could do everything that you could do?
So that's the other portion. So what I mean, a little bit of detail. Of course, you build your online portfolio. You have your resume, but then the most important thing is all those things that they see on your website, basically. And I had that, and that's the first thing that you submit. That's the first thing that you can send to people, and they will look through that. So I just made sure that was all buttoned up, and you're always trying to put your best visuals first, and give context to those ones, and a bit of a story, a bit of a backstory, or whatever it is, and your specific portion of that, whether you took the whole thing on or you just played an art director role, or you just helped with mood boards literally, and then someone else was there executing all of it. I really tried to put all my own stuff in there throughout my my career as a designer, I would say. So I had that all in there. I actually took an iPad as well, and I built another sort of small app, which was another thing that I was trying to figure out, because figuring out an app is gets quite complicated if you're not familiar with it. So I was trying to do that, but just to show that I just had ways to be creative, essentially, other ways to be creative, and shared all that. And actually, months later, after being in the job, probably even a year later, my boss at the time said, you were great. I remember what you were wearing. You were wearing this little jacket, and you were all buttoned up. I think you had a nice shirt on, whatever it was. So he was impressed, and he remembered the portfolio. But he told me that he actually thought I only actually did 40% of what was in my portfolio. The rest was more like showy, kind of not really my work. And I said, oh no, everything in there was something that I made, with my hands, or whatever it was, or I drew, or worked on the computer, or edited, whatever it was all my stuff. And he was like, I think people don't expect that, but that was personally what I wanted to put in, because I I could have put things from where I collaborated with other designers at, other agencies that I work with. But more of the stuff in my portfolio for this job was my personal projects, and a couple of things that I was able to that I led and executed. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think sometimes that the job description of an art director or a creative director can span across so many different things. You can have an art director or creative director working in advertising campaigns, or you can have them working in graphic design, or you can have them working in film, or you can have them working in event management, any of those sort of things. And did you kind of have bits and pieces of lots of things on your website, or was it specifically one area?
It leaned definitely at that time. I mean, this is I haven't put my portfolio together. I mean, I would love to put my portfolio together right at this moment, because I feel like it's changed so much within the last 9 years. But of course, being in this job, I haven't needed to collect that all and share that. But definitely, when I remember the stuff that I had 10 years ago was, it was more my strengths in branding. There was packaging design in there, because I worked for a company that was a skincare line, or a men's health, basically a men's health, shave creams and all that stuff, based in Paris. And I was in-house at that time, so I had the opportunity to work and build their products, their product offering, and how they show their products. So that was more the opportunity to get into photography a little bit more, and work with a professional photographer at that stage, not knowing anything that much about photography and understanding that world, and also having to art direct with my, making up my own vision of how I want things to look, and then, just using their skill set, which then, has evolved over the years. Another story about just loving photography and then going down a whole different route, but we can get to that. But there's different art director roles in, talking about art directors. A film art director has very different skill sets to a graphic design art director, or even even within art director, it can be a big range of different things, but really it's the collective experience of all the things that you've been involved in and have developed, and then just providing some kind of visual outcome, essentially, set design as an art director, or it's layouts on a screen as a graphic designer. Same, you're sort of executing the same kind of thing, but you just have different visual experiences to pull from.
All right. So like I said earlier, we've started all the way kind of at where you are now. And that, we've talked about that you've got quite an incredible career as a executive creative director. And that's kind of for a lot of our students, they probably see that as kind of the pinnacle of where they want to be in their careers. But I think it's important that we actually backtrack and go back to the start to sort of kind of reverse engineer how you got from that starting point to now. All right. So tell us about Melbourne. All right. Where did you study?
So I studied in Monash University, Monash Caulfield. I did a bachelor in, it was called multimedia design, and that was 2001. I started that one, so a long time ago. But it was a time when, a new buzzword was multimedia, and it encompassed a lot of things. What was so beneficial from that time was I did a broad range of subjects. So I had graphic design, I had life drawing, I had illustration, animation, coding, like web sort of coding stuff, even Flash coding at that time. I don't know if anyone knows that, but it just shows my age. And audio, I did audio, it's kind of like an audio engineering subject, film as well, and photography. So yeah, and then art, like art history as well. So it was great. Oh, sorry, and even 3D, as a subject. So it was so broad. What I didn't get from it was, you couldn't really master any of those things, but within those 3-4 years, you were exposed to different ways to be creative, really. And, from that, I decided to go into what I was more comfortable in at that time was more on the graphic side, more on like design, branding, and websites were a thing that I was interested in. I think, I when I was little, I would be on the computer trying to make my own animations, or even, trying to make music, and you have those programs, Mike, these programs, and you're putting these sort of tracks together, and they've got layers. So all that sort of within the programs, and tinkering, I enjoyed that. So I think that was an element that the sort of the web side of things sort of drew my attention to how you can kind of be creative in that sense. Translating basically the technical thing, and then what you see on the outside was a challenge and fun. So yeah, I went down that road, and then started off like everyone, just you get into a job, you don't have a portfolio, but you these are the things that I think the first things that I did show in getting a job were just the things that I did in my personal projects, and that was just really experimenting and playing in different mediums, and trying to show that I could problem solve essentially on something, or articulate that I had this thing in my head, or I wanted to create this, and the end result is through all the problem solving visually I could come up with this, and that was all I had to show to get going and get started in my career path, I guess. And yeah, so I went through a couple of agencies in Melbourne who were more on the small shops that were doing websites and brands, and so also doing freelance helps as well. I was trying to do freelance as a very young, I guess, person, young creative. You just want to help people out, and that also helps you exercise reasonings or rationales for why you started to create something. You got to start presenting that kind of stuff, and convincing people that this is the direction they should head, or this is the choices that I developed based on whatever information you got from someone. That's a big portion of it, and to learn that, and to articulate that well, and tell a nice story, to get someone excited about that visual or whatever it is that you're creating, and then selling that in. Can I keep going, or do you have another? Should I keep going on where I went, or?
If there was one thing I was going to mention was, for full transparency, I've known John for 25 years. I've known you for ages, right? Since you were probably like 15 years old, something ridiculous like that. And I was a kid when we first met. But I mean, you mentioning about music, I just remember sitting with you in a room somewhere, just for fun. You found some software, which was like, it's music making software. And this was before, like, I think you'd already gotten into playing music, but you got into the technical side of it. And I remember sitting there just for like a whole day with you, just going, hey, let's play with this software. And by the end of the day, we had this crazy kind of like electro track that we'd made, and we were so excited about it. But there's something that I always picture about you, which is that you've just got this like, it's kind of this enthusiasm for creating everything, and I love that about you. That you you and I together, we built like a skate park for youth, out in Bundoora, off with no money at all, and somehow we managed to get it, and no one died, which was a great thing. But there was always this thing where you were kind of like the Pied Piper for people to follow you. You just go, hey, let's do a thing. This is great. And I can see that, like, from a leadership perspective, I've seen that throughout everything that you do. You do things and people just go, I'll trust John. He's got the energy and the enthusiasm, and I'll follow with that. And I think that's a really great thing. It's probably where it's taking you to now. But all right, going back again, what was your first job?
My first job. Wait. Oh, my first job outside of design.
No, in design.
Yeah, it was a junior designer. It was a junior designer at a creative agency or digital agency. They call themselves, called Friday, and it was a very small, like, I feel like there was only 6 or 7 of us. Like one account person, 2 developers, and 2 designers, really, that kind of thing. And we were mainly doing websites. We're mainly building websites for small businesses, and occasionally there will be a new branding sort of project for a small business. So I was doing that for only a couple of years, but it was a great start. Like, I knew I had like the skills already to a certain extent, but when you just get thrown something, how are we gonna figure this out for the client? And you really just there's the portion of solving the design problem, but also the other side is just how, as a team, working as a team, or figuring out who can impart what, and listening. There's a lot of listening, and those kind of stages is you have your craft, but there's a lot of listening to the others and getting guidance and recommendations, and sometimes you feel like they call pixel pushers kind of thing, but it's all part of the process, I think. That was my first job.
And from there, I remember you sort of just picking up and starting to travel the world. Where was the first place that you went?
Before that one, I moved to another larger, it was probably about just under 50 people, I guess it was. It was still in the city, in the CBD. And that was another digital agency, but larger projects for larger corporations, but all in the web space. So it was a lot more that in that time, or that portion, I was already comfortable with, we need, these pages designed, or, work with us on these layouts, or come up with a couple of branding projects, all those kind of things. But that was, more of a time to work with larger teams, and there was different processes, and there was a UI specific expert. So you're starting to, I can design something, but it has to make sense. Back when things were very kind of still exploratory in terms of what you could do with like Web 2.0 at the time. So you had all these different experts in very specific roles. And so you had to go through more phases. There was you don't just go straight into the conceptualizing and creating things. They had to have all these reasonings, and then the wireframes, and then why are you putting things certain ways, and you're building those kind of things out. I mean, if you fast forward to now, we sort of still do that, but at the same time, from all those experiences, I can kind of compress a little bit and understand the reasonings and already integrate that into something. And you sort of it depends on what you have available to you, and the space and the time. Wireframes might just merge into a whole design phase, which is risky in some points, but then that's the things that you can, if you pay attention to as well, like you can attach that to your own skill sets, and have a better understanding of things holistically as well. So you're not just, I just do the design, or I just do the wireframes. No, you can do the whole kit and caboodle. That's where freelance is also good for that.
So from the perspective of, say, a young designer, it's really important to be able to get not just sort of one skill, but a lot of skills, and maybe to specialize in one skill, but then do you feel like to focus on at least just trying on the side, just to kind of pick up other things as you're going, so that you're aware of how what you do fits into everything?
Yeah, I definitely think it's to your advantage, and it's so much more helpful when you can, just even having if you do it a couple of times, or you just kind of dabble in something, in other things, I feel like it just gives you a grasp and understanding of what it takes. Even if you don't master it, it's totally fine. You're just like, I definitely understand the thinking behind that, or why that process is that way. And then it definitely helps you, be a better creative, specific to design. It helps you make better decisions about why you create something as well, because you're seeing other perspectives as well, which is nice. Even on a personal thing, like when you are meeting people, or you have an opinion about someone, your opinion could be very different from another person's opinion. You always have better perspective and a better outcome when you do have better, a broader range of perspectives in so many different ways. There's a whole life story there, but to design, it's the same thing. I do believe just being aware of those things and trying them out for yourself. You don't have to be, great at all of them, but seeing them is good, or experiencing. But you had your other question. What was it?
Yeah, you went on a really awesome tangent then. That was great. Yeah, storyteller. And this is one thing which I think is really interesting in your work, which is that desire to create stories. But let's talk a little bit about the story of you traveling, because I think it's one thing I find really inspiring about you traveling. And, I know this because I've known you forever. But you have lived in so many diverse places and worked remotely from so many diverse places before we even knew what working remotely meant. So, you've kind of worked all over the place as a freelancer, but just tell us some of your greatest hits from travel. Like, where have you been in the world?
Well, I give full credit to my wife, Rebecca, because she's the one that pushed me to travel, or like to go out there. I was happy being in Melbourne and sort of taking my career as a designer that way, but she wanted to live overseas, and she wanted to the first push was she wanted to study, take a course, and she wanted to do a subject that was in Paris, basically. So she said, let's, can we try this out? And of course I was hesitant at the beginning, and I was like, I've just got into being a designer at that stage, and I wanted to get to senior designer, and I was sort of keen to do the creative path there, but we just thought at the same time, we got nothing to lose. Australia is and Melbourne is such we're so fortunate to have all these, what do you want to call it, like support systems. So if we ever, really didn't make it, or we had to come back, we could come back to family. I don't think there would have been a problem getting another job, that kind of stuff. So, that was our reason to say, why not, let's just try something. And we come back with our tail between our legs. It's not the end of the world, basically, because we have great family, and we can just pick up again. We wouldn't have lost that much. But so we moved to Paris. I didn't have a job or anything, but the fortunate thing about that, about the creativity and the career that I have, is it's just portfolio, and it's what you can show. And I had that, started to have that from the past 2 jobs in Melbourne. So from that, I was fortunate to just you apply for jobs, and I landed one where it was an American company, which was fortunate, and everything was in English, but I could see where I could help them. They just needed someone internally to manage their creative and make their stuff look better than what it was. And they were selling and doing okay, but I was able to just refresh things and have a different perspective, which was great. And then I was lucky to keep that job. And it wasn't great pay or anything, but I was in Paris, and also that, like you was asking about, was just such an open, even if you don't have money, there was so many things that you then realize you just have to kind of also be creative about and make do. But I was fortunate that it was such a lovely place to not have any money and still have the best time of my life, really. That opened up basically the world from that year and a half. It felt like 5 years, but we just did so much exploring of the whole city. I fell in love with bikes at that time, because that was the only way to get around. But I started going down this road of fixed gear bikes when it was all very hip.
Yeah, so John, you've got to tell the LCI students a little bit about your obsession with bicycles.
My obsession. I was mentioning living in Paris, and I think it all started around that time, because I was riding to work in Melbourne when I was living in the city, but it was really just having a different environment, and noticing around the city just cool looking bikes everywhere, or people riding these the fixed gear bikes. And I just got drawn. I was drawn to the simplicity of the bikes. I'm always drawn to things that are clean or very simple. And so I just sort of developed this thing where I wanted to build one. Because at that stage I didn't have the money to buy one, so it was more like get a second-hand bike and then strip it down, and make it and turn it into a fixed gear. And sort of that began this journey of I started this website. It was on Tumblr, and it was called Fix, which was based off the, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it used to be called Found or something. And that was my I would just use that as like inspiration. It was just like cool imagery, cool graphics, cool anything on the visual side. And I sort of ripped that off, and then I wanted to just find cool looking bikes, and I made, just started kind of not blogging about it, but just always uploading all these bikes that I found. And so throughout that, I just saw cool things and wanted to make my own, so that's how it all started there. And then, I was fortunate enough to make my first bike there, and buying the frame and buying all the little bits and pieces over like months and months and months, just getting piece by piece collected in my little room, and then figuring out how to build it myself, and even the wheels and the rims and the spokes and all those kind of things. I'll maybe you'll probably see some of these photos from my Facebook. That
Yeah, you befriended like the son or someone of like the builder of one of the biggest bicycle wheel builders in the world, didn't you?
Yeah, that was also like a very happy accident. Someone that I worked with, her husband's mother, or her mother-in-law, was one of the owners of Giant Bicycle. So I was like, holy crap. And yeah, just sort of was picking her brain about, but that was, more about big road bikes and all those kind of things. But, her brother-in-law, another son of the Giant bike owner, built his own brand, more related to fixed gear. That's called H Plus Sun, and he was just doing the rims. And so, yeah, I kind of had these little connections with these people, and it added to, my sort of interest and interest in bikes and fixed gear specifically. So, my goal was just to learn how to build it myself when I was living in Paris, and have this nice, beautiful thing that I thought about the colors and the wheels matching and all these kind of things. But then the whole process of building the bike was so fun, and just figuring out all these things that you just don't understand or didn't know existed, or it was amazing. And then did some other bike building courses.
Yeah, so you traveled from Paris over to the States. Where did you go there? And you learned from a bike master how to do it like absolutely from scratch.
Yeah, so after the Paris stint, wasn't ready to come home to Australia just yet. I just wanted to try, see where else we could live. And the next place was Hong Kong. So literally suitcases and two bikes in bike boxes, wheeled over to Causeway Bay in Hong Kong and stayed in an Airbnb. And I didn't have a job there either. So I was looking for jobs, but then getting distracted by I want to make art. So I was, creating my own little characters and stuff like that, and spending days when I should have been looking for jobs. But there I didn't know anyone, or I knew very few people, and so you're trying to connect with people, and I connected with a fixed gear group. Was proud to show my bike that I built off there, and just have a little community, and get to know people. And so from that group, there was a couple of friends that I made, and they said, hey, there's this bike building course in Rifle, Colorado, in the States. Do you want to go do it? It's like 2 weeks. There's like, it's a very limited. It's like 3 people literally in someone's backyard shed, and he builds bikes. And so I was like, I didn't know anything about it, but I was like, I would love to do that. And right at that moment, I had a camera, and I was slowly getting into photography around that stage and buying something a bit better. And it was my first DSLR that I saved up money for in Hong Kong and bought something, and it was my opportunity to film it first time as well. So there was all these little things that came together. And so we went to the US. That was my first experience of the US, and a big country, and just everything was bigger and crazy. But spent 2 weeks building a bike from scratch, which was was amazing. It was such a fun project, but also thinking about how am I going to document this, because I'm sure this is going to be an amazing experience, but I would love to document it. So you're trying to film yourself, or think about other ways where and I was also learning about cameras and learning about, I didn't know about, apertures and lighting and all those kind of things, but just playing around basically, and knowing that I would have to tell some kind of story down the road. So just thinking ahead, thinking what I like to see, and keeping that in mind while I was just learning how to build a bike from scratch, which was a steel bike frame. So it was it was welding, it was soldering, well, not soldering, sorry, it was definitely just welding, which now I love to do, welding. Yeah. So yeah, that was another portion that.
Yeah. And I mean, that sort of hands-on, something that you mentioned there about, not just doing the making of the thing, but documenting it. I feel like you were well ahead of the curve for content development. I've already talked about it for remote learning. You learnt how to work for clients all over the world without being in the same country as them. Sometimes you were, but a lot of the times you were just doing freelance for people wherever. But also this idea of going, hey, if I'm doing something interesting, I'm going to capture it. And, so nowadays, I think the idea of content creators for, it's become a job in its own right, hasn't it? And so, for people to be able to have multiple skills is important. And so in your industry now, where you are working as a executive creative director, how often are you working with people like that, would you find?
So it's now basically a department. It's an offering that we even offer clients, and it's influencers, what is basically what they call it. And they're the new sort of celebrities that are able to sell products, or sell anything, based on their group of followers and the people that are interested in them and their communities. So we're always working with content creators, or actually us as an agency trying to be those kind of content creators as well. Like we essentially do that with a whole bunch of people. And so, we have the visual side, we have like strategy side, we have like writers, and, you are, for different kind of purposes and different kind of brands, they're wanting content delivered to their audience. So where we facilitate that, we come up with the ideas, or we, from like game plan for, say, for a whole year or whatever it is, or for a specific time. So, we are those kind of content creators, I would say, as a collective. And then, individual content creators, these aspiring YouTube, they want to create their own YouTube channels, or just be their own brand, have something to say or to show or to create, or even gamers or whatever it is. Everyone's looking for some kind of content, and the ability for a gamer or a someone that likes to make bikes, they want to share that, and they share their experience, share their knowledge. There's that part, and so content creators start to go, well, I'll create a channel, or and I'll hopefully start to get people interested, and then they figure out that the camera setup is where they need to like focus on, because they have terrible backgrounds, and they start to think about those elements, and then technical elements of the camera, and then they're like, oh, the content, and then they have to think about the content and what they're trying to show to make it interesting, and then they start getting into like how they tell stories, and there's so many things that they're collecting and building themselves, their brand, how they present themselves, or how they want to present themselves. There's so many things that go into being a creator now. It's not just you have one thing that you can just give out there. Yeah.
So I know that you're working with kind of like content creators, but you also work with you get to rub shoulders with the occasional celebrity also for your larger clients. Who are some of the people that you've worked with?
The most recent I think that I personally worked with was I don't know, I didn't know this, but Saint John. He's an artist, a music artist. Um, you're gonna have to like show something after this, but it's like I'll send you the name of the song, and
Excellent.
he's a pretty big, he's a pretty big artist, which I didn't know, but I've listened to his music. I didn't realize it was his music.
My daughter loves it that you've worked with Miranda. How can I forget her name? The YouTuber.
No.
Oh yes, we did a. That's another one. Miranda.
The comedian.
Yes.
She's so funny.
Do you know what her name is?
No, but now I sound like an idiot. Yeah, just Google it.
No, she does a Miranda something, doesn't she?
Yeah, her name's not really Miranda.
No, that's not her. I don't know.
Miranda Sings. Yeah, it's Miranda Sings. So, yeah, John, I know that like you've worked with a whole range of different people and different companies. You also occasionally get to rub shoulders with the occasional sort of high level, celebrity, and also just some ones who have kind of made big names for themselves online. My daughter loves it that you have done work with Colleen Ballinger, I think it is, who plays a Miranda Sings character. And I've walked into my daughter's room watching her obsessing over Miranda Sings for like 2.5 years. So when Belle found out that you'd worked with her, she was like, "You've got to tell John, I want to meet her." But yeah, so what I don't know much about it, but what was that project that you worked with?
Yeah, so that was, I guess, that was a few years ago now. So, and she's just kind of blew up, since then. I think she was, at that stage, had a really big following, but more in the realm of an influencer. That's where we picked her up, and we were doing a content series for Twitter. And her and a couple of other, influencers who were originally on Vine, where they sort of got a little bit more popular, were, moved over to Twitter as another, platform for them. And so we did a content series with a couple of influencers, and she was one of them, and she was very funny, and, basically had a bunch of questions, and she was just doing her thing in front of the camera. That was pretty fun because it was Twitter is quite a very big brand, so there's a lot of people to go through in terms of even the visual process, and what's the plan for this. Even though we had the idea of using these influencers or celebrities. But then to say how everything would look. So we kept it really simple, and then even, that process of filming, and which, I was fortunate to be the cameraman essentially, and that, and also trying to prompt questions and prompt it to do things and set the sort of the direction of how things looked, and the lighting. So having the knowledge from doing other things and other interviews previously from that, like, definitely helped me feel more prepared to be in a role where I had to essentially guide a lot of the directing essentially for a film shoot, an interview like that. So as well as being behind the camera and manning the camera, so it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So Twitter's a client then?
Was a client. We've moved on since then. But yeah, we were actually doing working with their personal, like, their video channel in Twitter and like
Yeah.
producing a whole bunch of content for them. Yeah.
So just like if you were to give me like a really quick kind of machine gun approach of list some of the brands that you've worked with, who are some of the brands that you've worked with, in the last few years? Or while you're at Praytel, who are the biggest ones?
I mean, Twitter was really big. Google was another big one. Waze was another big one. We for a long time we've worked with. I'm not sure it is huge here, but it's called Anheuser-Busch, which is Budweiser. They own all like so many different beers and craft beers, and so we've run the gamut of all these craft beer brands within their corporation essentially. That's a huge one that we've worked with. Pepsi, we've worked with Pepsi. Uber, we worked with Uber as well, and there's the different sides. We worked on the public relations side, and then we have the ability to work on creative from public relations. There's always some kind of media stunt or something like that, or there's like big campaigns that we're able to sell in, and then also have the ability to execute because we have a full creative team, part of the agency. So sometimes we're having to make huge commercials, but then getting external help. But a lot of the creativity starts with the team, the in-house team, and then we get what we need when we need it. Really, yeah.
Amazing.
I remember seeing I'm not sure what you actually ever end up doing with it, but I remember you filmed kind of like a summer camp video for, I think it was for your work or for a beer company or something like that, where you just bought some new equipment and you went out and shot this. I don't know. Do you remember that one?
Oh, it might have been for. Well, we've done a lot of different beer commercials. We've done a couple for Budweiser, which are some involved like the NBA, and I don't know if the one that you're talking was very early on, and I was just interested in filming things at that stage, and I had the opportunity to just buy equipment, buy a gimbal. It was that stage where gimbals were starting to become a little bit more affordable, and for DSLRs and all that kind of stuff, and so I convinced my agency, my boss, to if I could buy one of them, and then I promised I would film everything at this. They had a summer retreat that they invited a whole bunch of influencers and the media and all that kind of stuff to basically just drink their beers and have fun as adults. And so I just got to run around for a weekend with a camera, and a stabilizer, and at that time a drone that I didn't even know how to use. We bought a drone and it was terrible because it crashed, and but yeah.
It's fun. And I think it's, again, you being ahead of the curve, you were using drones and exciting stuff a long time before. I remember seeing, I remember you went and recorded your boss's wedding in, where was that?
That was in Vegas.
Yeah. So what did you do? For your own fun, you went and recorded your own music video, and you rented a Corvette, right?
Yeah. So I guess So the task for that was really my boss asked me to come and all expenses paid to film his wedding and to also edit the whole thing within a day to get to his the reception, and show the whole day, because he took a helicopter. We took a helicopter flight and we went through the canyons and all that stuff, the Grand Canyons. So yes, figuring out, knowing that you're just on the fly. If anyone's done wedding photography or videography, it's hectic. So had that. So I had the equipment. I had the plan. I knew what I was gonna try and do technically, and sort of had all that in the back of my head. And throughout that trip, we were just randomly we were hiring a car to to get around LA, and somehow ended up upgrading to a nice fancy Corvette, this big red sexy car. And I just thought, I've got all this stuff, Fast and Furious just came into my head. And my last name is Chu. And, there was one moment where someone made a comment about me being Chu Fast, Chu Furious. And I just had that in the back of my head. And then there was this Corvette that we had, and I had the cameras, and I was like, and I had a drone, and I was like, I know we're going to be in Nevada where there's deserts, and I have a drone, and I have this car, I have to do something. And so I just knew that, and I loved sort of the Fast and Furious, franchise. And I remember always playing this song in my car back in Melbourne. It was a ludicrous song. It was actually the one for like Too Fast, Too Furious. So I was like, I'm just going to get 1 minute of that, cut it down to like a good, piece, what I can use. And I made my wife basically memorize a verse, of that thing. And literally we just drove to the side of, we pulled off the road and we went down. I just was like, it's a big space, let's just go here. We pulled over, there was no cars around, so we kind of went down a dirt road. So yeah, so we were just, off the cuff, just, playing around with essentially the drone, the camera on the gimbal, and, just my wife and I on the side of the road. And I was, telling her, maybe you jump off this or you slide onto the car, and then I'll slide onto the car. And I was figuring out in my head that I would just edit it so that, I knew that I would have a lock shot, and that if she came into the car, I would do the same on the other side. And then in post, I was like, I'll just, I'm capable of editing it together so it feels like we're both coming at the same time. And, all those kind of things. I was on the cuff playing around with these ideas, just knowing that if I get enough shots, always, B-roll, my advice, if you're shooting anything, you just capture enough content, because you never have enough, not have enough. So I just made sure I just got so many angles and all those kind of things. But another portion was I knew that if we were going to do this kind of wrapping these lines, and I was going to get my wife Beck to do them, I wanted it to be in slow motion. So then I had to, at one of the hotels, I quickly, sped up the track that I cut together, knowing that it had to be at a certain time. I was Googling, what's the time if you were going to do at half speed, what's the speed of the audio. So, because basically she just lip synced that whole thing. So we were doing everything in double time, so it kind of looked funny, but I was like, don't worry, it doesn't feel weird, because once I put it together, it'll be all in slow motion. So yeah, just grabbed a whole bunch of content and then decided to figure out what I was going to do with that later when I got home from the trip, and actually, doing the actual task of filming my boss's wedding. But then, yeah, I was so excited because when I got home, you just get to play around and look through the footage, and, I wanted a nice kind of intro that ripped off the Fast and Furious kind of, brand. But yeah, it was just a good opportunity because of these cool elements that I had, and the equipment that I had with me, and the space, and the desert. So it was just, why waste an opportunity like that to just come up with something, even if it was just dancing in the desert. Doesn't matter. It's just a good opportunity. Yeah.
What I really like about that is that you make all those fun videos just for yourself, which might only get seen by sort of a handful of your friends on social media, or people that you send it to at 1 o'clock in the morning and receive and just go, oh my God, look what John just made. I'm just thinking about ones that I've seen that you've sent of you and Beck riding through Europe when you went on this ridiculously long months long trip riding through Europe, and sending us these crazy videos, and then other things. And, but what I guess what I'm getting to here is that, throughout your last sort of 25 years, you've done everything from, do packaging design, build your own bicycles, make websites, make films, play around with equipment, do all these incredible things, just kind of obsessively where you go, I just want to do this because I want to do it. It's fun. And I think that points to a really exciting life of design. You know, it's something that design has been able to take you to some really interesting places and put you into some really interesting contexts. And, you know, I know that now that you're kind of like in the executive director role, it means that, you know, it's not just about, you know, doing design, but it's also about spreadsheets and budgets and all those really, really fun things. But, you know, I think that it's been a really interesting journey to watch, and it'll be really interesting to see where you go from here. So do you have any plans for the future?
You know, immediate plans. I'm having my first child, so that's, you know, in a few months. So that's going to be a whole, you know, life-changing experience, which I'm definitely looking forward to, because all the things that you know, my creativity, I just want to be able to see, you know, that, see what my kid does with that as well, or you know, I can help with that. Plans is just to keep learning. I think, yeah, always have needed, maybe because I can't keep still, and I want to make things or create things. There's always something that a project that I have, or multiple projects that I have written down somewhere where I've started it and haven't finished it. So always there's a checklist, you know, every year that I have with my wife, with our life goals, or just, you know, a journey that we want to take. You know, a lot of the things written in those goals are to do with my, you know, the things that I'm thinking about creatively, or, you know, stories or artworks that I actually haven't finished in years, but it's still on this list, you know, from 8 years ago, that I will definitely get to. And, you know, things will change, but yeah, and evolve, really. The concept might change a bit, but, you know, I just want to tick them off the list, you know, in terms of the ideas that I have. And then, you know, throughout those things, you're always just adding extra ones or putting other creative things that you can tackle. It's all problem solving. For me, it's all just you know, through work and, you know, personal stuff, visual problem solving. You know, it is creativity, but you really just, you know, wanting to get a problem solved, you know, at the end of the day.
Brilliant. John, I just want to say a huge thank you to you. I think that you've lived an inspiring life so far. You're still living an inspiring life. I'm sure you're going to be an inspiring dad. What's that? No, you've got a long time to go. You're only still like 19, aren't you? I think that's how old you look. Yeah. You are the youngest looking 40-something-year-old I know. So, you know, you've got a lot to do. Yeah, but I just want to say a massive thank you, and good luck with everything in the next coming months with new child and everything, and enjoy Venice Beach, and enjoy your creative pursuits. Thank you.
Thank you for having me and talking to me.